My never I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
KPratt Jr. break his silence on a year NPP a year internal election holding the last week. Yeah, Dr. Bawumia emerged as the winner. Now, Wama a year assembly and meme bisa said, will there be a further crackdown in the NPP Amanyokuro? Sesenia some time back, Alan Kojo Tremantin, a free NPP Amanyokuro, a quote on one Kasana party. If I may be a course on any angel. This time, there is some information by KPratt Jr. earlier today and suggested none of the other 4 candidates are NPP in whom said they are fit to be a running mate of Dr. Bawumia. And no, KPratt Jr. said these people contested to be the flag bearer of the party. So, is the party saying, say, Omumu Baku Biare Niwa? The party can filter him and then scrutinize him and then also put him on a scale and say this person no ye pair with Dr. Bawumia. Ye bet me winning and as we will stand a chance of winning in 2028 election. Now KPratt Jr. I hinted on one person in Ashanti region. Yeah, it is likely said the NPP is going to pick that person to pair Dr. Bawumia to face the NDC in coming 2028 election. Now, who in Ashanti region is the NPP party planning and also likely to pair him with Dr. Bawumia? Yet the details from KPratt Jr. A higher PENDREAM TV. Subscribe to the channel, bell notification, na share my afofro and sa and can be uti and send you definitely have a comment. Nowadays, we're doing about comment section more. Now why you're not constructive. KPratt Jr.
Well, let's listen to what Mr. Pratt thinks about this whole issue of the NPP primaries, what has happened, and where next for the party. Comrade Pratt.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of commentaries about the NPP internal elections to choose a presidential candidate. And what I've heard most of the time is congratulations for the holding of a peaceful elections. As a matter of fact, the day after the elections, I also congratulated the New Patriotic Party for holding elections which turned out to be largely peaceful. I've heard many people say that there were no incidents at all. On the day of the election, I heard about 2 incidents. They were minor. They can be ignored. It doesn't take away the beauty of the elections. But to say that there were no incidents at all is not true. So there were some incidents which can't be ignored. Again, commentary in the elections gives the impression that nothing has happened in the NPP, and that the NPP, which won the 2020 elections, is intact and is still that NPP and so on. But there has been a clear, major event in the New Patriotic Party. As we speak, one of the kingpins of the party, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with him or you dislike him and so on. In 1991-92, I was keenly aware of the role that Mr. Alan Martin played in establishing the New Patriotic Party. You understand? I'm aware of what he did to raise funds for the party, contributions that people like him made, even in shaping the philosophy of the party as well. So he's a real kingpin of the party. Now, if you consider the fact that he actually had run to be presidential candidate of the party and nearly pushed the elections into a second round, you cannot ignore him. Now, this figure and his supporters have left the NPP. They've not come back to the NPP. Okay. So they talk about unity of the party, they talk about the fact that the party is intact and so on, is defective. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, you can talk about the unity of the party now, without Mr. Chairman Ting. But then we have to realize that a substantial part of the party is no longer with the party, and there are no indications that it's coming back to the party. So that's an important point. Now, for me, the other important point, and nobody can deny it, and nobody has attempted to deny it. If you look at the amount of money that was spent as incentive for delegates to show up and vote, I should tell you something. Indeed, if the New Patriotic Party had announced that anybody who wanted to vote should come and vote, you can imagine the number of NDC, CPP, PNC people who would have rushed to go and vote. Because voting was not for free. Yes, sir. Today, 400 cedis to go and vote. Can you imagine the numbers of people who would have gone to vote? Okay, so the turnout is also not an indication of the unity of the party, the popularity of the party, and so on, because of the major incentive which was provided for people, to go and vote in the elections. Now let's put that aside. We are hearing from the contestants and their supporters that they are united behind one candidate. And sometimes they go to the extent of saying that he's the most formidable candidate, he has a vision, and so on.
Which ideas?
Now, if the person elected is that formidable, is visionary, knows the answers to the problems of this country and so on, why did they then contest him? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, a candidate has been elected. Those who contested him are now telling us that he's the best candidate to lead the party to the next election. Why did they contest him then? So they contested the best candidate. They didn't want the best candidate to become flag bearer. They didn't need a visionary to become flag bearer and so on. There's a problem with this posturing. You understand? There's a problem with this posturing. Now, the campaign messages are not hidden. They are not buried. They are available. If I take your phone now, and tap 1, 2, 3, everything will pop up. Everything will pop up. I don't want to repeat some of the things that they said, as Solomon has done. Solomon has gone to the extent of repeating some of the things that they said. But some of the things that they said are really frightening. I mean, if what they said were true about the person who has been elected as flag bearer of the party, and they said, you understand, why would anybody vote for him to become president of any country, not just Ghana, any country? So that problem is there. And they have a lot to explain. I mean, those who contested Dr. Bawumia, those who described him as visionless, those who said that his academic qualifications could not translate into competence and so on, should come and tell us why today they are asking us to vote for the same person who is visionless, whose academic qualifications mean nothing, and so on. They need to do a lot more convincing. You understand? So that is also an issue that we can put aside for now. Now, it's important also to look at the figures, the results, the actual results. And if you look at the actual results, they are not comforting for the NPP and those in the NPP who want to win election 2028. You see, within the New Patriotic Party, based on the elections, it can't be argued that Dr. Bawumia's popularity has come down. In the last primary, he got around 61%. In this primary, he's getting almost 57%. Somebody must be able to explain this. How come that apparently his popularity within the New Patriotic Party is dropping? Now, in the last election, when he got 61%, I heard some of the pundits actually argue that going into an election, a national election with 61% of your own home-based support is terrible and may be an indication that he could not win the elections. Now, when the election results came, it turned out to be the most disastrous, the third most disastrous election result in the history of the Dankwa Buzia tradition. Today, it is not 61%, it's come down to less than 57%. What does that tell us about the possibility, of victory in 2028? Now, there's something else. I mean, now, there's no doubt at all about the fact that the most credible polling organization in Ghana today is Global Info Analytics. Nobody doubts that. Okay. But beyond almost accurately predicting the outcome of the NPP primaries, they also did some pairing which was interesting. They paired Dr. Bawumia against all possible or potential candidates of the National Democratic Congress for the 2020 elections. 2028 election. Thank you. Now, it turned out that in that pairing, Mr. Julius Debra, current Chief of Staff, was the worst performing possible candidate of the National Democratic Congress for 2028. But even him beat Dr. Bawumia in the first round, 2028. His votes were around 50.2%. You understand? That should be worrying for the New Patriotic Party if what Global Info Analytics saw, and this poll was conducted in December, you understand, only 2 months ago. I mean, when he was pitched against people like Haruna Idrisu, Atu Forsen, and others, his performance was terrible. Okay. So again, it shows that there is something to worry about. On this score, we can say that, look, we still have 3 more years to go. And 3 years in political life is a very long time, and things can change. Yes, it is possible. Things can change. It is possible for what is today seen as the achievements of the Mahama administration to actually, go away. I mean, for example, we are now talking about the rate of inflation being 3.8. Nobody knows what the rate of inflation would be in 2028. Okay? Today, we are talking about the value of the cedi hovering around 10.2%, 10.2 cedis to $1 and so on. Fine. I'm not sure, I don't know, whether by 2028 that situation will still persist. Okay? Today, we are talking about debt to GDP ratio having improved significantly. Today, we are talking about how the country's debt stock has been substantially reduced. Today, we are talking about how the energy sector debt has been drastically reduced and so on. All of these are facts. And all of these are pluses for the Mahama administration. But the critical question is that will these indicators, will these figures remain the same in 2028? If they should change, what would the implications be for the 2028 elections? As we speak now, 2028, there are so many imponderable factors, you understand, that nobody can accurately predict the result of 2028. But common sense will teach us something interesting. And I'm talking about common sense, ordinary, pure common sense. Common sense would indicate that for the people of Ghana to change their mind and vote for the new patriotic party, the indicators, economic indicators, the social indicators, and so on, ought to be worse in 2028 than what they were in 2024 for that shift to occur. So if in 2024 the cedi is exchanging at 12.5 to $1, it would not be beneficial to the new patriotic party. If in 2024 the rate of inflation will be 7%, it can still not be beneficial for the new patriotic party and so on. The NDC must necessarily perform. NDC's performance must be worse than the NPP performance in 2024 for that flip, to occur. And sitting here, Senna, I don't know how that is going to happen. I don't know how that is going to happen. I mean, for any government's performance to be worse than the performance indicators in 2024, it will take some doing. You understand? It will take really some serious doing for us to arrive there. So, I'm not particularly optimistic about the chances of the new patriotic party. Now, you listen to them, all of them, including my brother in the studio, you listen to all of them, and what they say is that, if only they could unite. I don't think that election results spring from internal unity. It doesn't. I mean, to think that way is to underestimate a people. Elections substantially are about bread and butter issues, concrete issues which have relevance to the welfare of the people. So when we are going to elections, we are actually talking about access to potable water. We are talking about food, access to better nutrition, and so on. We are talking about national infrastructure, how people move around, and so on. It's part of the equation. We are talking about improvement in access and quality of education. They are even talking about sports and recreation and how all of this impacts on people. So you can unite all you want. If you are unable to convince the population that your assumption of office will lead to significant improvement in people's access to education and the quality of education, you are joking. Your unity doesn't mean anything. You can unite all you want. If you are not able to put forward a plan which suggests that national infrastructure will be substantially improved, you are joking. You can unite all you want if you are unable to convince the people of Ghana that food will be available and will be available at prices and conditions which will enable people's access to food to improve. You are joking. You understand? And to be honest with you, Senna, so far, I haven't heard anything that suggests that these conditions would improve. And to be honest with you, very honest with you, the only candidate in that contest who spent considerable time talking about how to improve agriculture, how to improve the employment situation and so on was Kennedy Japan. Kennedy Japan was the only one, you understand? I mean, his whole campaign was based on that. But he lost. Okay? He lost. And it's interesting. Now, since the elections, something else has happened in the New Patriotic Party. And last Thursday, I was reading the newspapers and I found a syndicated article, newspaper article, syndicated. And why I say that is syndicated, that the same article, word for word, was published in about 5, 6, 7 newspapers. You understand? Word for word. No, nothing changed. The same article in about 5, 6 newspapers. And this article was actually saying that, look, the party has to choose Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the running mate. Okay? And that if the party chose any other running mate, it would be a disaster. I hope some of you read that article. That article was offensive in the extreme. Because at the time when you're talking about party unity and the need for everybody, including contestants who lost, to rally around the candidate, that article was denigrating all other candidates and saying that they are unfit to be running mates. Now, if you run this kind of syndicated articles in the newspapers, how do you then expect the losing candidates to rally around when you are preaching and telling everybody that they are unfit? They cannot be running mates. They contested for flag bearership. They lost. And they are not qualified to be running mates. They are unfit to be running mates and so on. And we expect them to rally around. I mean, that's very strange. And that article was very, very damaging. You know. In any case, we've had apologies from Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia about the fact that a lot of mistakes were made in the campaign and also in government when he remained vice president or when he was vice president. Which were the errors which was made in the campaign? Did that include the selection of a running mate? And if that included, and I'm not saying it did include, I'm just asking, if it included the selection of a running mate, are they going to repeat that same mistake? I mean, I don't know. But these are the issues, these are the questions that need, to be answered now. Then I also see the effort to fan ethnic sentiments. It started all over again. You understand? And I'm worried about it. And I must confess that, to be honest, it is not only within the NPP that sentiments are being fanned as an election gimmick or election strategy. In the end, this is happening in the NDC too. But I see them in the New Patriotic Party, and I am worried. I'm asking whether really the change that we are being promised by Bawumia is true or not. There's so much emphasis on choosing an Ashanti as running mate, with the argument that Ashanti continues to be the stronghold of the party, and that if the running mate is not chosen from Ashanti, then the party will be in crisis and so on. This is ethnic campaigning. This is ethnic campaigning on the basis of ethnicity. And I'm frightened, okay? Now, while saying this, I must confess that during the week there were also similar articles which appear to have been planted in the newspapers also by elements from the National Democratic Congress. And these included articles which were campaigning for Mr. Kojo Bunsu, currently ambassador to China. And these articles emphasize the fact that it's an Ashanti. You understand? So those who planted that article and those who planted the article about Napo and so on, they are the same. Same backward thinking and so on. Now, I'm worried about the fact that ethnicity is on the rise, you know, in our political campaigning and so on. Then there's a trend which must also be very worrying for us. Maybe not that worrying, but a trend that is noticeable. And this trend was noticeable in the 2024 campaign. The trend to distance Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia from Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and what appeared to be the failings of his administration. It hasn't gone away. It is still there. It is still there. And I've heard his supporters, or some of his supporters, say that now the apron strings to Akufo-Addo have been cut, and cut for good, and that he will be his own man, and so on. I'm not so sure that that is a sensible way of campaigning. Because to have this as a campaign message would suggest very strongly that as vice president, he had very little influence. He could not in any way contribute to shaping policy within his own government. And you see, if as vice president he couldn't contribute to shaping policy within his own government, within cabinet and so on, how then can we expect him to help shape policy merely because, you know, he's now become the flag bearer and so on? Because when he won, he had to go to Nana Akufo-Addo to pay obedience, obeisance and so on. He had to go to President Kufuor and so on, which suggests that these people still have some influence within the party. And he cannot, you know, as it were, ignore them. But then there's something else. You all remember my very good friend, Dr. Martin Opoku Prempeh's claim, which virtually said that Bawumia was the most sensible person in the last cabinet. Maybe he was. I wasn't there. I didn't take part in the cabinet meetings. I wouldn't know. Maybe we should believe Napo. Now, if you have to believe Napo, the question that arises is that if at cabinet meetings he demonstrated that he was the most sensible person, that was even far more sensible than the president himself, how come that this argument did not reflect in policy? Because you could only see his brilliance and so on if indeed he was able to convince his colleagues. He was able to do proper analysis of the issues that came before cabinet then and so on. But truth is that in spite of the fact that he was the most sensible person in cabinet as claimed by Napo, he himself says that he made no impact. So what was the use of his sense? Sense that made no impact in cabinet? I don't know. Massa, 2028 is approaching. I'm a Ghanaian. What I want is that by the end of the 2028 December 7th election, there should be no reports of injuries and death at polling stations. By the end of the elections in December 2028, what I want to see is that we have elected a government that is focused on delivering on the aspirations of the Ghanaian people. We have elected a government that has plans to ensure that the resources of Ghana are owned by Ghanaians and exploited for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. What I want to see then is that we will elect a government who did not campaign on the basis of ethnicity, which did not tell us that Christians should vote for me because I'm a Christian, or that I was a Boy Scout, you know, or Boys Brigade member and so on. What I want to see is a government which truly unites all of us. What I want to see is that we have a government which is not pandering, and this is a very serious issue for me, that we have a government which is not pandering to any one particular traditional authority against others. What I want to see is that we have elected a government which was paying respect to our traditions and culture and so on, understands that Ghana is a democratic constitutional republic in which there cannot be any kingdoms. You understand what I'm saying? Must I finish?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, so we'll turn to one issue that has to do with naming, especially the Kotoka International, what is currently known as the Kotoka International Airport. A few comments before we get there, though. This from our Facebook platform, Replay Nana Sighting, says, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you and your panel. Sana, I want to assure you that the NPP will bounce back stronger and win the 2028 election by Dr. Bawumia. Sana, inflation has dropped to a single digit, yet still Ghanaians can't purchase anything at the market. Cocoa farmers are suffering due to lack of money to the licensed buying company to buy the beans. This shows it clearly that the NDC party is incompetent and cannot win power in 2028. From Nana Forjo Sefi, we also Western.
Allow me to do this. I beg you. I know it's not part of the normal format.
Okay.
But there's a certain level of deliberate miseducation of the public. And I'm happy that Nee is in the studio with us. I mean, he's professionally more competent to deal with this issue. You see, when we talk about inflation dropping, it's not about prices dropping. Inflation is the rate at which prices of goods and services rise. So if it's at 3.8%, what it means is that prices are still rising. But instead of rising at 24% as it was, it is now rising at 3.8%. So every time you hear NPP supporters saying that, oh, the prices have not come down. Inflation at 3.8% does not mean that prices are falling. Basic, simple secondary school economics. Yes, sir.
In the other context, you find the NDC trying to preach that inflation has dropped, for which reason prices are now dropping in the market. So it works both ways.
Well,
that is what I also hear.
No.
That is why. But what you said is the truth. Inflation means price. It's not deflation. It's inflation. So they are increasing. So
reduce.
Exactly. But the point people want to at times make is that the 3.1 or whatever.
3.8.
It's not a. You see, it is a combination of a whole lot of things in the basket, and usually it is the services that takes a higher chunk of it. So you realize that the services aspects are so huge that you will not also get the 3.1 increment in our daily purchases. So it's a whole lot that we can.
It's a statistical.
The basket has always been 150 commodities.
Yes.
Can I make, Masa? You're right. Okay. The other factor to consider is that the rate of inflation, gross domestic product, all of those things are statistical averages.
Yes.
Okay? Which means that the things in the basket, some prices may actually have fallen.
Sure.
But some may have gone up.
Exactly.
So when you strike the average, you get 3.8%. It's a statistical average.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's important to take note of that. Now, I hear some NDC people argue that prices are falling. And prices are falling.
Yes.
Okay? For example, if you take the price of rice, it has fallen dramatically within 1 year. If you take the prices of petroleum products, they are falling dramatically in the space of 1 year. Okay? So, commodities for which the exchange rate is so important, and so they are falling. But the other commodities for which the push factors for price and so on are not the dollar and so on. They have remained high or have even risen. But if you strike the average, prices generally today are increasing at a rate of 3.8% instead of 24%, which is a good thing.
Instead of 20.
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.